What's going on? Danny Crew, it's Danny Drew here, and I want to say thank you so much for showing up, supporting the channel, bringing your energy, having a great time. This video is going to be a little bit different, a little bit special. You see, I've been doing this channel for about a year now, and I've been having a blast. We've been growing it and just having a great time. Oh, by the way, we're live on Twitch. Twitch, say hi. I think a lot of people are going to see this, so you better give them some energy. You better give them some love. Hi, YouTube. Hi, YouTube. Let's go. Now, what was interesting was I recently did a community post on my channel, and 1,000 of you, when I asked, hey, when I started this channel, did you know that I had a Road to Rank #1 series where I actually achieved #1 in the world? I was actually really surprised because 41% of you said, no, I didn't know that you did this. I didn't know that you achieved one of the biggest things related to doing Catan YouTube. And that kind of shocked me. I thought people knew. I thought that was written into the history books, but I was wrong. I think this is a great time coming up to the 1-year anniversary to revisit this series because, you know, there was a lot of factors to why my channel blew up in the first place, and this was absolutely one of them. And also, it was a very special moment for me. The way this essentially happened was on the final day of Season 4, I was, I think, 7th or 8th, right? I had a score of like 1930 ELO, and I was pretty determined to say, you know what? We've got all day. Why don't I actually try to close this out and get #1? And I kind of knew that I needed to win just 2 games. 2 games would get me to #1. Well, what I thought was going to be just like, you know, maybe 4 or 5 games, end up being an 11-game excursion with roller coasters of up wins, down losses, getting super close, dealing with toxicity. I mean, it was a roller coaster, and I'm not going to spoil the end. Maybe you've seen it. But what I'd like to do with this series is to revisit some of these moments and essentially show you what does it take to become #1 in the world at playing this game. Just to give you some context, I was really excited. The first 2 games, actually I ended up losing them both. Mentally, at this point, I was pretty frustrated, but you know what? I was pretty determined, so I decided to keep pushing. Now we're going to start at game 3. I think this is a very interesting game. I think it's a very interesting position. This was game 3, very interesting board, and we are in the 3rd position as frame control. So what's the situation on this board? Well, if we go resource by resource, I think there should be something that should immediately stand out to you, which is the wheat. So the 8 wheat, very strong, very powerful, and the thing is there's a coordinated 8, so you know kind of wheat's only going to happen on an 8 roll. You do also have things like the 2 and the 12, very fun, very interesting, but just really not exciting, not enough wheat to support like an or wheat cheap strategy. And as far as the brick, also the brick is very interesting where it's like you do have a decent amount of brick where you do have the 6 and 9 and the 11, but the 9 is a little bit in no man's land, so not really accessible. I do think the 6 brick has some utility with the fact that there is a decent amount of wood here. The ore pairs pretty nicely with the 8, so you can kind of think every time an 8 rolls, action's going to be happening in terms of cities and development cards. And the sheep's somewhat middle of the road, right? You have the 4, the 10s, the 3. It's a really strange board. There's not anything that's screaming to me like that's going to be a slightly like a dominating strategy, but I think certain roles are certainly going to change the dynamic of this game. If there's going to be lots of 8s, you might see a lot of development cards popping and going off. If you see a lot of 6s, this player might be able to really take advantage of that road game and work it out. All right, so let's go through the game. I guess at home, what do you think first pick should be? I think probably the most sensible pick, you take the 8, 5, 10 here. It's 3 unique resources. It's what we call OWS in a box. You have a guaranteed game here, and you have a lot of different ways you can pair this. Pension 8, 10, 8, 4, maybe 6, 11, 12, and even like 9, 10 to pick up the brick situation could work. So 8, 5, 10, I think is a no-brainer. Now, knowing that the wheat's also powerful here, I kind of think the 8, 10, 3 makes a lot of sense. It has a similar situation as the first one where it is or wheat cheap in a box. But I think the one advantage that second has, though, even though it is less production, it has some interesting port play here. So you do have access to like the wood port and then also the sheep port as well. So I think these 2 spots are sensible. But us being in 3rd, I think we've got to make a calculated decision. So let's go through this game, see what happens. 8, 5, 10. I think that makes a lot of sense here, for sure, for sure. 3rd and 4th have a very strange situation here. For sure, for sure. Yep, 8, 5, 10 makes a lot of sense here. I'm also really intrigued. A lot of times you can kind of see I'm seeing this idea of like the 4-3-5 up to the 8-3. I think it's a really good option. I think potentially third or fourth might be able to pick that up on the way back, or even start with the 5-4-3. But again, we've already pointed out that the road building situation is kind of be locked to maybe 1 to 2 players at most. I think picking this in third might be a little bit too dangerous. And I think it's fair to say that second probably should just take the 8-3-10. Perfect. Okay, so we are in the third position. What do you guys like here? I always think it's good in general to think about what's your advantage. How are you going to get the biggest advantage on the board? And generally, I would say that's either trying to control development cards and playing that game, or it's trying to control the wood and the brick and play the road game, or at least having some kind of push where you can say, hey, no matter what, I can at least have my little niche on the board. This is very important, very important. Because if you can't articulate your advantage in a game of Catan, then it's very likely you're hoping that the dice are going to roll and put you into a lucky situation. We don't play with luck. We play with strategy, and we play with skill. We got a 3-4-6 and a 6-4-3. I believe they are the same thing. Any other ideas here? I like the 6-3-4. I like the 5-9-10. You could also make a case for that 4-5-3, like we said, up to the 8-3 is an option. I play with luck. This man, if anything, is at least honest. So TRO110, 6-4-11. I think, something I'm noticing here, there's some energy. We have energy with this section of the board here. What's wrong with the 6-4-11? And I do articulate this in the video, but I want to kind of see if I can re-articulate this. 5-9-10 has 2 good outs. Yes, it does. I think the one thing with the 5-9-10 for me, and I'm maybe kind of like telling you guys more or less what I'm about to do, the 5-9-10 is kind of playing that or wheat sheep style game. So for me, again, like we've already got 2 players who are starting with really good or wheat sheep, have the best starting wheat. It kind of feels like a dangerous game, and I don't see a real advantage for third playing that. But again, they could get lucky. They can pull the right devs. They can get the right rolls. But we're trying to play for a positional advantage early. If you take the 6-4-11, you leave the 6-3-11 open. Yes, exactly. All of a sudden, this advantage of having the good like wood brick combo kind of gets thwarted a little bit because you're leaving the 6-3-11 open, which is a really good pick. Even with the 5-9-10, like, hey, I'm going to go wheatless, but I'm going to have the road building and I'm going to play that game. So I don't really like giving someone else an advantage on this board when I think 6-3-4 gives me a clear advantage here. I do have the best kind of wood brick combo. And there's also an interesting note here, which is that I can build to the 4-8. So that advantage on the 8 wheat that black and, let's say, mystic blue start with, I can kind of minimize that by building to it and hopefully do that kind of quick. How much do you like roads? I love roads. Honestly, I think if you're good at playing road games, you can crush a ton of people. It's like one of the most underrated and underappreciated strategies in Catan. Because look, everybody knows about development cards. Everybody likes to play or wheat sheep. So it leaves an opportunity for somebody who's proficient at roads to come in and clean up. Yep. Now I'm thinking point right. I'm concerned that potentially 8-4 might be a target, but knowing like the board here, I don't think it will be. Also, pointing right has some issues where 4-11, like starting road to 6-11-12, could actually be a real threat by black. So I think the safer bet here is definitely point left here. Yeah, I get it. Not everyone plays OWS, but let's be fair, it is the meta. I mean, there's a reason why first and second took or wheat sheep. But when everyone zigs, you got to zag. And that's part of, learning Catan strategy. Find your own lane. Find your own way to play the game. I really don't like fourth's pick here. They're not going to get good wheat. They're not going to get like a good wood brick. I guess they could go 6-11-12 with like the 5-9-10 and pray. But it doesn't look very attractive to me, frankly. Who knows? 12s could roll. I'm a sheep man. Okay. I kind of like the premise of Red's pick here. My question to them is how long will it take for them to get to the port? The port being 8-3. They're more or less putting their flag in or wheat sheep. So now you look at this board, you say, right now I have 3 OWS players, and we're the only person with wood and brick. That's a pretty big deal here. Pretty big deal. Where would you go here? How do you figure this game out? What's the strategy? What's the idea? 9-4-11. 6-4-2. Okay, interesting. Point right. 9-4-11. So you're going to play essentially no... Well, you're going to get onto the wheat, but no port. You do lock up the board as well. I think one thing you have to calculate there is probably this guy's going to take... It's interesting. I think he'll go maybe something like 6-4-2, potentially. 6-11's a real threat here if you take 9-4-11 and lock the board. Like, I could see black taking the 6-11 and pointing right, and then blasting to the 6-11-12, which effectively kills my ability to get settle spots. So actually, I think the 9-4-11's a mistake here, right? Because as a road player, I need spots. I need space. And if I calculate that the 6-11's going to go, I have one settle spot and no port. That's a losing game as a road player. But it is good ratios, but the lack of a port's really unsexy to me. 9-4-2, 9-4-2. Yeah. Looking at this board, I really liked what the 9-4-2 offered me for a few reasons. It's slightly defensive in the sense that it kills the 6-4-2 and the 9-4-11 with one pick. I start with the wheat, and I start with the sheep that I need to get to my settle. And I have space. I open up the 5-2 and the 6-2, potentially, if that's a road network that I want to play. I didn't really like the 9-4-11 in the sense that I left certain spaces open. I think I lose 6-11. And I'm calculating this right now. If you go to the game, you'll hear me calculating this position out for sure. And this is very common, by the way, when you're playing road games. Sometimes you're not going to get your perfect setup. But what you can do is you can build to the ideal setup. So if like you picture my setup with 5-2 and 8-4, like it's actually really good. I have the best wheat. I have really good road building. I have some of the best ore on this board. And I have access to the double wood here. I've got a 3-1. It's good. It's just really good. 6-4-2 looks good, I think, but the road game... The reason I don't like the 6-4-2 is like, A, I like the access of the ore here. The ore's nice. But I can build to the 6-2. So I can road settle, road settle. And then I can use the top left-hand side of the board potentially to be my road network. Because remember, we're going for road, so I need to create space. By taking the 9-4-2, I killed a 9-4-11, which I actually think is just a really good spot in general. I don't want to give that away. Because if you look at the sheep situation, like let's say 9-4-11 potentially goes to either light blue or black. Effectively, we've doubled their ore, we've doubled their sheep, and they already have the best wheat on us. So it's slightly defensive, but I think this is like a strategic choice I have to make in like a high-level game like this. You know, we're talking about a 1930 ELO game. 6-11 is something else. Oh my god. Now, look. This is a top 10 ELO game. I'm at like 1930, 1920 ELO. And you still get plays like this. So I hope if you're watching this, there's a little bit of encouragement to say, like, as you go up the ranks, you're going to deal with all sorts of shenanigans. That's just the nature of the beast. 6-11-12 is too strong for black. It's pretty good for black, yeah. But I think, honestly, better was the 9-3-11 here. I think this is a little strange to me. 9-3-11, 3-1, city, buy devs. I think this is overly defensive. It's like light blue made a really bad pick, and then he tried to punish the really bad pick. It's like, it's a bad pick for a reason. Let him stew in his mistakes. People do weird stuff sometimes. All right, let's keep moving here. Yeah, now, you know, everyone wants brick now. Like, you know, we try our best to calculate these things out. Cool. So now I want you to start thinking about objectives. Okay, let me just pause real quick. In a position like this where I know that as it stands right now, I lose the game. If I leave my production with 6-3-4, 9-4-2, I lose the game. But I need to start building the perfect setup and kind of building it from there. The question is, where do I go first? Do I go to 5-2 or do it 8-4? Drew's production is pretty bad, but he has production expansions. Correct, yeah. I think here you've got to think about ratios, right? This is whenever I'm building up an ideal setup, I'm thinking about how do I build the ideal ratios. Now, of course, like a port is nice, But the whole point of a port is to fix your ratios. But if I can settle onto a hex that fixes my ratios, that's just better. Because then I don't have to spend 3 cards or 2 cards to get that resource. I can just roll into it. So I think 8-4 makes a lot of sense. And also, not only do I get the extra wheat on the 8, but then I double the 4, which all of a sudden I go from 3 pips of wood to 6. So now my wood and brick are really nicely matched, and I can start to move around the board more effectively. So I want just to get you into the mind of how a good player would see this position here. 8-4, 8-4 always, yeah. It's a no-brainer, but I think we come to these decisions by having that thought process of ratios and kind of figuring out what gives us the most momentum as a setup here. And here's like the value of that brick. The ore doesn't do much for me right now because I don't have enough wheat to use it. As you know, ore only goes with wheat when you're building cities or development cards. So until I get the wheat, it's really difficult for me to consider anything else. But we can always try to make some trades. The sheep has a little bit of value here. Trying to clean up my hand here, see if I can get a wood, get a wheat. I have a rule in Catan, which is that if you can action every single turn, like drop a road, build a settle, drop a city, buy a dev, if you can do something every turn. Oh, the 2! The 2 is sick here. The 2 is nasty. Actioning every turn, you'll probably win the game, right? That's my philosophy, is I can keep my hand moving, I can keep building. Very likely that momentum of consistency will help you win a lot of games. So you guys aren't trading enough. You need to be trading. Look at these god rolls. 2 into the 4. It's a great start for us. And somehow, 9-4-2, we have a starting city. The 2 again. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. And we survive. All right, crew. That's a pretty sick set of rolls for us. Where do you city here? Right? We're going to take the city. We're not in a position in terms of our production to pop. As like a rule of thumb, generally what you want to do is you always want to try to get a city as soon as you can. There are certain exceptions to that. We're not going to get into the nuances there. I think a lot of players don't get a city sooner. Like they buy development cards, and what happens is they lose on production in the middle to late game. So a city here is just absolutely fantastic. 3-4-6. Road and city, 6-4-3. Yep. And really, the 6-4-3, it's all about our advantage. And the fact that we have an extra wheat after we drop the city, it's like, perfect. Sitting where we have our biggest advantage, like if we think we're going to take road, we increase the wood and the brick. If we think we're going to fight devs, we need to try to increase the ore and the wheat, and ideally the sheep. I'm trying to get cutesy here. Probably I think the best plan here is just to drop the city and be happy. I think this is a little bit of a mistake by me, trying to get the settle. I think the only thing I'd be worried about here is potentially maybe black having a road builder. I mean, this is obviously road 8-4 is pretty nasty. But the city's good. I don't think I should be so... Like, maybe if I can get it cheap, I'll take it. But just the city pass is good for me, and I just need a single 4 or 6. Yeah. I think I'm poking and prodding here on trades to see what's out there, but I don't think I would ever take that trade, personally. There we go. And just pass. This is good. This is good. Something in the video, if you go back and watch. So here, you know, I have 2 sheep and a wheat, right? I can't lose the wheat. If I lose the wheat, I really suffer because I probably then have to 4 for 1 to get the settle. So during this point in time, I'm like, on stream, I'm going, don't lose the wheat. Don't lose the wheat. Don't lose the wheat. I lose the sheep. Perfect. Perfect. So now, black plays a knight. Don't lose the wheat. Whatever you do, don't lose the wheat. And the 9's a fair block. And we lose the sheep. So we're hanging on to this wheat for dear life. And then he doesn't block us. Something I did here in the chat, you know, it's very common when players get robbed, you know, let's say 2 times in a row. They'll usually voice to the board like, hey, can you share a little bit of love? I notice this a lot in Discord games. People tend to voice that like, hey, am I going to get robbed 3 times? The reason they do it is because it works. So when you find like the board's maybe just hitting a little bit too much, don't bitch and complain. but don't be afraid to speak up a little bit and try to bring a little bit more balance to that situation. And I'm not sure if maybe he would want a different card, but he should have robbed me here and taken the wheat. He didn't. All right, so we kind of have to start over a bit. We need to get some more rolls back in here. Again, don't lose the wheat. We can't lose this wheat. Hanging on to the wheat for dear life. So Nuke's asking a good question. Do you drop the road or protect the wheat? That's a great point. In that situation, one thing I could consider is instead of dropping the road because I exposed my hand a bit, I could leave the road in my hand and say, you know what? It essentially makes it less likely that if they were to rob me, they would steal the wheat. I generally think that's a good way to think about the game, especially if I produce a lot of wood and brick, which I do on a 6 and 4 now. Yeah, I don't think it was necessarily a bad play to drop the road, but that is like a very high level way to look at the game. Is like, if I need to protect a card, I'll leave cards in my hand to kind of pad it a little bit. All right, hold on to the wheat for dear life. So now we need a 4 and a 6, which is not bad. We'll need a 4 anyway, so kind of losing the sheep's not bad. Red, very well for themselves, and I think now the game's balanced a bit where I think red's going to turn the tide here. 2 cities going down, the 4's dropped. We need a 6 now. We need a 6 for sure. Don't think the wood has too much value here just because the brick's not on the board. If there's no brick on the board, very likely your wood's not going to have a lot of value. Let me slow this down just a tad here. Okay, so I think we're in a balanced situation here. Hard to say who's the strongest. I think with black pacing army and having that 8-5-10 city, probably they're definitely in the lead. But we'll see. We'll see. I don't think one thing here, if you look at red's position, okay? How does red win this game, do you think? There is a decent shot that red could go for army. So, knowing this, I'm almost of the mind that you need to stop whoever's the biggest issue for you for army at this point. And it's black. Black has a down dev now. They have 2 knights played. I don't like the 6 block. And I get it. A lot of you like to block diplomatically where you're going to hit 3 players or maybe 2 players. This is one of the biggest mistakes you're making right now. You need a block with, like, fierce. I'm telling you this right now. If you're fighting for army, you need to drown your opponent and make sure that they can never take away your win condition. And then, as the game balances in your favor, then you can shift your blocks to maybe be a little bit more diplomatic. But in this stage, red should be hitting black where it hurts the most. So potentially things like maybe the 10. Because if the 10's rolling, that means black's buying development cards and you're just getting stomped. It feels ineffective. It feels a little weak. And frankly, like, black has no wood. So he can't even use the brick anyways. Like, if anything, he's trading the brick to red because red has an excess amount of wood himself. It's a very interesting situation right now, right? And now the 8s are rolling. It sucks. I'm missing out. Missed the brick. Black's doing very well here. Now the 5s are rolling. The 8s are rolling. Really sucks here. Really sucks. So now I'm going for value trades. When you're behind, go for the 2-for-1 meta. Always good. This is how I keep myself in the game, is I'm always looking for value. Whether I'm asking for 2 cards, or I am trying to get like a card plus a non-block, or a future card. Light blue. Nice good old 4 ball here. My wood has no value. There we go. Perfect. So we have the settle, 4 points. Picking up the 8-4, huge for us here. 2-card meta, right there. Perfect example. A break for a wheat ore, amazing for us. Now, it does give him the sheep port, but I think we've got to take some creative risk here. All right, so he's going for the knight here. Doesn't rob us, which is very interesting. I think this is an interesting note here. Threat detection. If you think about it, I don't know what the math is, but there must be a number in Catan where the average number for every number of cards, it should equal about a point, right? So maybe every 6 cards somebody produces, I don't know what the number is, right? On average, like, what's the number of cards versus like point output? Like, I do think red's doing well here at 5 points, but also you need to factor in I have 11 cards. So I'm going to at least 4 points and maybe a dev. like you can make a justification that I'm like at 4 to 5 points here with 11 cards. In that sense, like red has no knights, he has no devs, he's kind of out of settle spots now. Maybe it was worth considering hitting me here because I am kind of the road guy at this point, especially after 8-4 where I'm just going to start cooking. Things to keep in mind there. I think the big thing here is we do need to survive, though. If we 7 out, obviously a lot of our advantage, a perfect example, our advantage goes out the window. I like holding the wood and I like holding the wheat here. Makes a lot of sense. I need to start getting my 5-2 settle and I need to get the 8-4 settle up and running. So yeah, that really sucks. Those 7s could really cost us the game there. Perfect. 8-4 unlock here. 3's a city. 2 9s is a city. We are playing portless right now, but hopefully with a few decent rolls, we can get over to the port kind of quickly. Like a 4 and a 6, we're good. So now we're getting robbed. Big setback. Big setback there on that 7 for sure. So who we put our money on? Oh, the 2! The 2 has been amazing. The 2's been amazing. So this is actually a good exercise. It's something we practiced the intensive recently. Is checking yourself in at the middle of the board and kind of figure out what's happening, right? Like taking stock. Players don't do this enough. They don't take an assessment of like who's in the lead, who's playing for what, how is the middle game going to evolve. So looking at Red's position, he's really established his like setup nicely, but you know, he's got no development cards. He's probably not getting army. He could road settle for 6. I think it's pretty clear that Red's path here is buying development cards and letting that illuminate the path a bit. Or port, this guy, he needs a city. He needs a port, he needs a city, and he doesn't really have a great port at that. Like the wood port sucks. I think Black's doing very well with 2 open settles. Army, you know, you can easily see 2 settles is 7 points. And then, you know, let's say they start popping there a little bit more aggressively, pulling a few VPs, pulling a mono. Black's looking pretty dangerous, for sure. I think the one thing, too, about this situation that's really standing out to me is this open space. Who's getting the 9-3-11? I don't really see Red making a play for this unless maybe they pull some kind of supportive dev, like maybe a Yop or Road Builder. Yeah, I mean, I kind of think I'm the favorite, just given my natural wood brick. But I feel like these players could do it if they had a little bit of help from a dev. But we'll see. We'll see. It's a very good spot. Yes, in terms of longest road, whoever takes the 9-3-11 here, it's probably going to either create a pretty substantial road network for them. So if Red gets it, then he can connect this way, and it's pretty unstoppable. If I get it, then I can go connect this way. And frankly, I mean, it feels like Oraport doesn't really have a lot of juice, but it does help him in terms of playing road here, for sure. All right. The 2! This 2 has been unstoppable. Look at this. 2, then back-to-back 2s again. What a wild 2. We love the 2. I'm pretty sure this 2 is the reason why I start saying the 2, by the way. The roots of this 2 is undeniably influential. Okay. We need some good rolls here. We need 3 or 9. We're going to get the city. We also haven't seen a lot of 3s either, which has definitely hurt us quite a bit. There we go. Now, I think we could all agree at this point, probably that's an interesting... That's a city right there. I would take this trade. I think guaranteeing myself a city. And I do think Orport's a little bit behind here. I'm accepting it. I'm taking the trade, man. So what is he doing here? He needs the wood. Very likely. Wow, he doesn't... Look at this hand, by the way. What a beautiful hand. So we end up getting the road settle in the city, which I think in this situation, you just take it. Just take it. I'm trying to work out a deal here to steal the port, the wheat port. I think this is a little bit defensive. I do think Black's in a good spot here, but probably better is just to road settle and get the city here. Or especially if I can get a brick, I probably should just go to the 9-3-11. Okay. So I take the settle. Boom, 6 points. Now we're cooking. So the question is, who's winning now? Who's winning now? Yeah, so effectively, the vision we had for this setup is finally there, right? We got the 8-4, we got the 5-2, the cities have happened. I'm really looking at the 9-3-11 now because I think that really, if we get the 9-3-11, we probably win the game with road. So that's kind of my goal, is to see if I can get there. Yep. So this is a good opportunity, I think, if light blue can probably get there. One thing too is, like, even if we lose the 9-3-11 in this situation, we still have the 6-2 because, remember, we went 9-4-2, which kind of opened up the space up here. So one thing I want you to be thinking about when it comes to playing road is, how do you create space? Because space is one of the biggest assets you have when you have the wood and the brick. Sheepport is sexed. It's something. Does anyone believe Drew would go to the... I would. Pretty decent block here, hitting the 5. Hits both red and black. Nice hand. Trying to drop another city. Probably unnecessary, though. I think this is a good situation where I can build roads to potentially 6-2 and say, you know what? I don't think I should be fighting the 9-3-11, but I can get to the 6-2 and maybe try to work out a situation there. Yeah, okay. I want to stress one thing real quick, too. Obviously, I played this game, but I don't remember a lot of it. So, like, I'm kind of reliving this. I mean, I posted this 11 months ago after posting over 200 and something games. So I'm trying to, like, give you snapshots of, like, how I see the board, but I don't remember exactly what happens step by step. All right, red starts popping now, so you got to start assuming... Oh, the 12, big roll here. Got to start assuming potentially 7 points, settle for 8. We're going to be able to settle for 7 ourselves. Maybe city for 7, settle for 8. So we've got to find a window here. Perfect. I told light blue here I'm not going to race him. He gets anyways. All right here. I think in this situation, I'm not feeling too great. I think I need to be able to win quickly here, because if anybody ends up snagging road, yeah, 8-4, big win here for us. So now we are the settle road away from winning. This is our window. This is it right here. Because as soon as we lose road, we need to manufacture an extra 2 points, essentially, which might be a little bit more difficult for us. So I'm trying to create a window. All right, black's at 7 points here, settles for 8. Black has probably the cleanest path here, just because they already have army. They have an open settle. They have tons of production here. I don't know if I like the 4-11, though, but it's not bad. One thing, too, is if we can get the 6-2 here, or, like, hopefully, it does give us coordinated 6s, which is certainly an idea here. Okay, so we're getting robbed now, which makes a lot of sense. We are the road settle away from winning. 10's probably our nastiest roll. 10 right into the 7, though. That works pretty well for us. All right, we need some 4s here. I think 4s are going to be our gateway. 4s would be the settle for 8 straight up. See here. It's coming down to the wire. Yep, I think this makes sense. I think knowing black's hand, I think he has a settle in it. So you want to be breaking a settle. Don't want black going to 8 here. All right. Unfortunate. By the way, that's a massive block. I think if that 4 was in our hands, we'd probably win the game right there. So really big block. Really big block. Okay, we got to settle for 8. So we have rolls to win here. We have rolls to win. Oh, well, we did. We did until he took road. Oof, another 7. Smashed us to death here. So I'm going to keep an extra sheep. We have kind of a low sheep situation. Perfect. All right, 8 points here. 8 points, looking good. 9 would be another city. That would be 9 points here. Coming down the wire, I mean, black wins with road. Or port potentially could be on 8 points with the VP. Right there's 9 points. That's another city. Bjorkai coming in. Thank you, man. Pokey, what is good? I think yeah, or port. This guy that snuck road at the very last second might be on 9 points now. So this is an interesting play for me here, thinking about this. I end up blocking the 8 here. This is like a weird call where it's like, do I solo block? And I'm not sure. I kind of feel like, 8-3 is the win. I think if I'm putting him on 9 points, the 8's fine. But like, what else would I block that would make sense? Maybe the 3 and leave the 8 open for me. But I think in this situation, blocking the 8's a questionable play. I don't know if I would do it again. If he's on 9 points, I think just stopping the devs is probably the smartest play here. Which is like, if the 8's rolling, light blue probably gets a little bit too much. Classic build to 10. We're building slowly but surely. So now we got the chord 6s here. I think probably the fastest way for us to win this is to get a few 6s and then run for a settle. So like 6-6, and then all of a sudden we got the road settle potentially in our pocket here. And if the 2 ever rolls, oh my god. Yeah, now they're judging me for my solo block. 4th in the world doesn't make sense. It's a risk. Oh my god. All the points are coming in. I think we're putting red on potentially 9 points here. Oh, big roll for red here. 8 cards, 2 down devs, and they're not playing a knight. That's pretty scary. Takes the mono, 5 or I think it's a GG. There you go. There you go. Yeah, end up being a 40-minute game. 10-9-9-9. Yeah. I mean, he pulled the VP he needed. He built like a beast. I think the balancing really gave red a lot to work with here. Because as we were balancing, I was blocking Horpor, we were blocking black, I was getting blocked. Red got like stolen from quite a bit, but he also just had massive production. I mean, if you look at the rolls here, he rolled 74 cards. Rob second least, rolled the most. Probably going to be a good shot to win here. We also did lose a lot on the 7. We lost 9 cards, which were pretty critical 7s for us. So moral of the story. On my run, this was game number 3. Remember, I played 11 games to stay. I lost the first game. I lost the second game. And then I lost the third game, which is absolutely brutal. But I think there's a lot to be said about don't let losses, beat you down too much. It's going to happen to everybody. Losing 3 in a row sucks. And I would, typically recommend you walk away. The show must go on. So I did keep playing from this point. Hopefully that was interesting for you. Hopefully you learned a few things. Again, this is part of a bigger series, 11-game series to get to number 1. Yeah, we had a great game plan, and this is very common with some of these strategies for 3rd and 4th where, okay, we don't have the perfect starting setup, but we can build one that gets us into the game and allows us to have a playable setup. This is something that I've always recommended to you is, at the end of the day, it's about outplaying the board and not simply outplacing. I think too many players get caught up in trying to place the perfect setup, but that's not how the game's played, and certainly not what's going to get you to the highest echelon of Catan. So, hope you enjoyed that. Thank you so much. Stay tuned for part 2 coming up soon. Peace.